Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok. Do you have them all? Your podcast, is ready. So it's time to focus on all these social media channels, right? Or is it? Hi, it's Mike from Casefile. Casefile Presents. On this channel, I'm releasing videos on podcasting. So if you enjoy the content, you can hit the like button. Okay, so there is no reason for me to explain, the social media, especially that you're watching it on YouTube and you've got your podcast either ready or you're planning to start one. The questions are, do you need social media channels, especially at the beginning? And if so, if yes, which ones? If you're a podcast listener or you're into a podcast, I'm sure that you sort of try to look up the creators or social media for a show. And then maybe if you've done so, you found that some shows have big social media following, different channels, and others have, not at all. So what is the deal there? For some podcasters, it makes sense to have all these social media channels, and for others, it doesn't. And that's because when you're starting out, you not only have to do the research and learn all about the gear, the software, the podcast production, but prepping a podcast, making the episodes takes a lot of time and effort. You've got to research, you've got to write, you've got to record, then release. Social media in that regard can be detrimental to your podcasting because it will take time from all the work that needs to be done. It will also depend on what kind of podcast are you running. So for example, with Casefile, it's a continuous show. We are releasing episodes pretty much weekly. It does make sense to have social media to keep in touch with listeners as well as to let them know that the new episodes are out. However, if you are working on a limited series, let's say 8 episodes in total, then social media may not be a great idea. I mean, it can still work, but there is a different way of looking at it. You also have to think about the content of your podcast and which platforms will suit you in the best way. So looking at Casefile again, the host of Casefile is anonymous. So doing Instagram stories or Snapchats or TikToks wouldn't make much sense. But let's say I'll start my podcast and I call it Mike Migas Podcast, and then maybe doing these little stories on my phone for Instagram or whatever be more suitable. So there is a little bit of thought that needs to go there. And then you've got to also think about the content of the actual posts on your social media, because let's say you're running a financial podcast and then someone goes onto Facebook and your Facebook page and you're posting videos or photos of your dog, then that wouldn't be, that wouldn't make much sense unless your listeners love your dog or something like that. But again, it'd be good that social media content matches or the content of your podcast. A piece of content can either hurt or help your brand. And the idea is that the messaging is kind of consistent throughout the social media channels and matches what's being said and released as your podcast. So let's say you've got a true crime podcast, but of a serious kind. And then someone goes onto your social media and you post funny memes about crimes. Now that would be a total mismatch. And then of course you've got different platforms. So you've got Twitter with short messaging, you've got TikToks, you've got YouTube, you've got Facebook. So you've got to think what kind of content you'd have to produce for each of these platforms, and that of course takes time and effort. So as you can see, it might seem like kind of obvious, I'm starting a podcast, so I've got to start all these social media channels as well. But when you stop and think about it, you can see how much time it will actually take and how much effort and that can take you away from producing a good podcast. With Case File, we didn't have any social media for months, and it was only after a few years that we came up with sort of cohesive strategy of how to run it properly. So it took a long time. Also, when you're starting out, it may be just you doing it all, maybe two people. So it's important not to spread yourself too thin with all these channels and all these means of communication. But if you insist of, having at least something, then maybe start with one, build it up. And then as you grow and develop your show and maybe grow your team, then you can add new channels of direct communications with your fans. The good thing about social media channels is that you get and you receive that direct feedback and instant feedback from the listeners of your show. And that can be incredibly helpful in the beginning. However, with time, when you start developing the style of your show and sort of get into groove of doing things, social media can become a distraction, because with good comments will come trolls and negative comments, sometimes borderline abusive. And that doesn't do you any good reading these comments. Personally, I'm not a fan of social media, so I don't have any social media apps on my phone, and I only use it for sort of professional development or marketing and just talking about podcasting stuff. And with Casefile, we've been lucky enough that after a few years of doing so, we do have moderators that go through social media and look after the people and the comments. How it works is that after we release the episode, I will look at the initial comments the first day, maybe the second day as well, just to see how people respond to the latest episode. But after that, I stop and I don't read any comments. And that's because, we can get 100 different comments, and within these 100 comments, you get like 3 negative comments. Your brain is immediately drawn to these negative ones, and they can affect you in a negative way, even if it's just for a little time. And after years of doing it, these comments still affect me negatively. So it's not like you can grow a thick skin, or maybe you can, but I wasn't able, so I rather not look at them and don't read these sort of troll comments. Otherwise, I get triggered. So bear that in mind when you start something, anything, and you put it out there. You have to take the good with the bad. But that's it for today. I'm Mike Migas. If you enjoyed this video, you can check the rest of my channel. But for now, you can hit the like, you can subscribe, or you can share with somebody. I'll see you later.